I was born under the aurora borealis, under the dancing lights of winter. I grew up in moonlit darkness, in the land of the midnight sun, a land where the sun never sets, where the moon and the sun shine simultaneously, where the silence is quieter than the first stillness, and time is present, like moments that never pass, through hours of vastness, raw, pure, where heaven meets earth in winds as wild as your wildest dreams.
Hello and welcome to On Point Podcast. My name is Iselin. I'm a Norwegian actress, yoga teacher, and a curious soul having this human experience. So what does on point really mean? On point is an expression that means immaculate, impeccable, flawless, superb, or quintessential, or simply just good. According to the Urban Dictionary, it's usually used by people who severely lack in vocabulary. And being a Norwegian myself, speaking both, Norwegian and English on this podcast, but also Italian and some other languages thrown into the mix, I've had my struggles finding the right words, but, I love languages and I think I do a pretty good job. Yeah, even though in this episode, I'm speaking to a fellow Norwegian in English because she wrote a book in English. It's out in Dutch, it's coming out in Spanish and Norwegian too as well next year. So we might have a new conversation in Norwegian. But yeah, I have a lot of listeners abroad and I want to get this message out there to as many people as possible. So on the On Point podcast, we share insights and inspiration in the field of personal development, yoga, and also spirituality. So yeah, stay tuned and subscribe for more. Yeah, follow wherever you're listening, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel where I am publishing the recordings since COVID. I started recording via Zoom, so you can check them out. A link is in the description. So yeah, you can also follow the On Point account, onpoint.podcast on Instagram, and my website and Facebook is all linked below this episode. So this week's guest is the beautiful Kristin Vikjord. She's the author of Inner Spark, Finding Calm in a Stressful World. So Kristin, she is a clinical psychologist who teaches the application of yoga and mindfulness as complementary to conventional therapy. Kristin is co-founder of Delight Yoga, the Arctic Yoga Conference, and the Inner Peace Conference in both Amsterdam and New York. So she now lives in Bodø, Norway, and yeah, I will link the link to buy this book, The Inner Spark. I absolutely recommend that you go and get it. If not for yourself, you can gift it to someone who might need it. And all of her links is in the description as well. She also has her own podcast, which we get into. So I follow Kristin on Instagram, and I bought her new book, and I absolutely love it. And I want to read you what it says on the back. There is a part of you that never changes. That is the essence of who you are. Yet at the same time, you're always changing. Kristin Vikjord presents a practical toolkit of exercises to help find, regain, and nurture your inner spark. Drawing on her experiences as a clinical psychologist and yoga and mindfulness facilitator, Kristin combines these complementary integrative therapies with practical activities that match up to the 3 sections of the book: normalization, clarification, and agency. She explains how pathways in the brain work, showing how, and crucially, why it's important for anyone navigating a difficult time, physically or mentally, to have a toolkit for reconnection. I'm so excited to introduce you to Kristin. Let's dive into this episode. Okay, hello Kristin.
Hi.
Welcome to the On Point podcast.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting.
Yeah, it's so nice to finally be speaking to you, and I want to congratulate you with your new book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah.
I was just talking to you about how beautiful it is.
It is. Yeah, I love it. I love the colors on this edition. And I love, the gold that goes across. Looks like the Northern Lights. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it does. And you have a raving review here from a guy that I know very well, Deepak Chopra.
Yes.
Yeah, a book that will help you move through difficult times and remind you of your own greatness.
Yes.
Love it. Yeah, you need to tell me how you got him to to write that.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I mean, we have so many fantastic, great teachers and cool people in our network, and it was kind of a via because we were communicating with him for some other projects and events, and I'm both a little bit nerdy, but I'm also a little bit bold. So every time I meet, people that I look up to, or, people, authors, or, that have done this great work that I admire, I always go up to them and say a few words. So we met him actually in Amsterdam at a big event he had. And from there on, I just kind of, kept the contact. And I thought, well, I could ask, and he said yes. So I was just very, very grateful for that.
Oh, that's so amazing. And yeah, you need to be a little bit ballsy.
It's true. Yeah. It's like with a lot of things in my life, I do this because I think, I'm a pretty little scared bunny often. I can feel quite nervous about things, but when I get this idea, or I feel something instigated in me that I really believe in, or that I have passion for, I try, in my own tempo, to take small steps in that direction. And I mean, either you get a yes or you get a no. I mean, that's kind of the worst end of it, to get a no. But I always try to move in the direction that feels right for me. And it usually pans out pretty well.
Yeah. Life can be pretty magical if you follow those little steps and little nudges. Even though you might be a little scared, that's completely normal, and it will pass. But I also read that you got a good review from Elena Brower, another teacher that I admire, who has inspired me a lot. So she writes, Kristin Vikjord's book is here to help you intelligently reveal your own inner spark and experience more luminosity in every area of your life. Like, hallelujah.
Yeah. She is so cool. I met her, I don't even know, maybe it's almost 15 years ago in New York, first time, because my first yoga teacher recommended me to go see her when I went to New York. And I did. And I was like, wow, this lady is so cool. And we just stayed in touch, since then. And I was so, so happy that she wanted to write a little few words about my book.
Yeah. So, what inspired you to write Inner Spark?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's a big question. I guess it's been a journey, but, I don't know.
It has been a journey. Well, actually, what happened was that, I've been working a lot in this field and teaching a lot. And so at one point, I was thinking, like, I want to sort of compile everything that I teach to my students, and also a lot of the sharings that I do in my client work. And then what happened was that after I gave birth to my first son, he's now 9, he's almost 10. I was there was something moving in me, something very strong. And I started to write little bits and pieces for myself, and found that was a creative outlet for me. And I was writing all sorts of stuff. And then, after a few years, I was like, okay, I think I can sort of bring this all together to something. But I wasn't sure what, and, what to bring in and what to leave out. So it was actually a pretty long process for me to figure that out. But I think also the process was about daring to write something that I was going to show to someone else, That was also a big part of it. And then eventually, eventually it came clear that this was going to be the book. And the working title at that moment was Radical Freedom, because I was really, playing with and living in this, like, how do you free yourself from the conditioning of your mind? And this is very much related to yoga philosophy and the motivation behind our yoga and meditation practice. So that was kind of where it started, when I really started to write it from the start to the end of this book. And the Inner Spark title was something that came up because there is this anecdotal story about my grandmother. Her name was Hirschen, so she's my name sister, almost the same name, and she actually lived just a few houses from where I'm sitting right now. And she said to me once, when I was like in my early 20s, she said, "Kristin, you're like a glass of champagne. You're bubbling so much." And at that time, I didn't really, think about it so much. But after when I was in my maternity leave, that memory came back, because I was like, I don't feel like a glass of bubbly champagne right now. I feel like the opposite. And so that's where that, part of the story came in, and also why I wanted to write this book, because that was also moments in my life where I was looking for how do I personally, but how do we move through when we feel stuck in something? And mostly that stuckness is in our head. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story with your grandmother. And you paint these beautiful pictures of living up north in Norway. And I know that a lot of people who don't necessarily live in Norway, who haven't been here yet, they have this beautiful image. And I think that you definitely live up to that stereotype.
I guess.
Yeah, because the Northern Lights and this when you share stories about growing up and asking the big questions, like, why are we here? Like, I'm on the West Coast here in Bergen, and I definitely relate a lot to your experiences. And I think we're both grown-ups here, but we it doesn't take long to have this experience of losing a little bit of that spark that we all have as children. We get a lot of messages from society and our parents and friends, and we start to adapt. And a lot of stuff happens. But so you write in the introduction that you, of course, wrote it before COVID was a thing, and now we're all kind of facing a lot of challenges and I guess a lot of darkness. We're moving into the winter time here in Norway, and I guess up north it's pretty dark. So you have a lot of experience in facing, the literal darkness, but that inner darkness that I guess a lot of people are struggling with right now. It's just so on point that you wrote this book. It's so timely.
Yeah.
So you share a lot of tools in this book. So how we can navigate these times?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I think maybe I like the metaphor of the darkness here up north as something. I mean, I grew up here, and like at this period, the daylight comes at like 10, 10:15, and it goes again about 1:30. So it is quite dark, and for me, I think the metaphor is all about, I'm not so scared of the dark, this dark, because I'm used to it. And I think it's a little bit the same with the darkness that we can touch upon within us, is that we are perhaps, and this is also a social cultural thing, right? It's part of the paradigm we have grown up, is that we are fearing that dark because it's apparently not good for us, and it doesn't serve us, and so forth. However, I believe that, and this is why the book is constructed as it is, with assignments that you can do to unravel what is within your own darkness, so that you are not scared of it. So you don't fear it, but that you actually get to connect with it and see what is within there of meaningfulness. What can you lift out of it and potentially learn about yourself in that darkness? Because usually the inner darkness, it comes when you are very close to this threshold of moving into something new, or when you're very close to change, and that either you feel resistance towards the change, or it feels too soon, or it's just overwhelming for whatever reason. So it's a very clear sign. If you're in contact with the darkness within, there is something, I believe, that you need to be listening to within yourself. It's trying to tell you something about where you're at and how you're doing.
Yeah. And I've spoken about this before on my podcast, like how these times we're forced to, stay more inside, and being isolated. It's not a really good thing for our psyche, but it also brings up our problems maybe in a new way, because we cannot easily distract ourselves with, heading off to Paris for the weekend, or London, or planning these holidays necessarily, or going out on town. So I think a lot of people need these tools right now. So we have this experience with living in darkness here. So yeah, definitely. I think we're, as Norwegians or up north, we might have some extra tools in that sense. But yeah, this inner darkness, it is difficult, because you also talk a lot about how our surroundings shapes us and influence us. When you grew up in nature, and versus living in a city.
Yeah. And I think for me, that was several moments in my life I have been confronted with that. I think the first time was when I was 16. I moved to France to go to school for a year, to a city called Angers. It was very exciting, and I was at that point convinced that I had been French in a previous life, and I was like, I'm going to live in France. However, it was very exciting on many occasions, and it was a lot of fun. But also, that was the moment when I realized that my life in Buda and the nature that is immediate in the surroundings around here, but also the fact that I had been going to our cabin, which is even further north, pretty much every weekend in my whole upbringing. When I found myself in the middle of the city in Angers as a 16-year-old, I was like, I remember one day I was looking up into the sky, and it was beautiful weather. It was warm, anything you can dream of. But I was like, I started to feel like I can't breathe in a way, like there's something missing. And I was looking and looking. I saw all these beautiful buildings. And then it struck me. I was like, God, there's no weather here. There's no wind. There's no mountains. There's like, the trees are perfectly, arranged. I was like, God, there's no wilderness. What? And it was a moment of like deep realization. Whoa, this actually does something to me. And of course, later on, I've lived in Copenhagen, I've lived in Amsterdam, and of course been traveling a lot. But there also, I mean, I value those places and the city life in itself, but I also then found that the nature actually is so deeply embedded in me that I realized that in a way I felt like I lost a little bit my wilderness in the city, because when you are here in these crazy raw surroundings with the nature, it's this constant reminder that I'm just a small part of this whole thing. In the city, it seems like, if it rains, it seems like the rain is people looking at their apps and say, when is the rain going to pass? Because it's like obstructing our daily schedule. We cannot go out. So then it seems like nature has to fit the scene of how you live. While when you are here, the opposite is a fact, because when it's blowing here in Buda, or what other kind of crazy weather we have here, it's like you can't think like that, because if you do, you can't live here. So is this how the attitude you have towards who you are in your surroundings? I think that's my point. Like, how do you see yourself as part of where you are? And are you the center of it, or are you part of everything around you?
Oh yeah, I can relate to that, having escaped the Nordic winters and my depressions. I used to live in Oslo over 10 years ago, and I was just like, I need sunshine, I need warm weather, I need to wear all my dresses. So I eloped, and I never came. Well, I came back many, many years later, but I went, to walk around the sunny streets of Rome. Eternal sunshine. That was my dream. I too wanted to go to Paris, and same story, basically. But I ended up in Rome, and I just remember it was so hot, and I had to face a lot of struggles there too, but I just remember this summer day when it started to rain, and I was so happy. Yeah. And all the Italians, they don't go out. Like in Norway, we live by the saying, there is no bad weather, there's only bad clothing. Yeah. But when I lived in Rome, I discovered that is not true. That is propaganda. But I was just so happy, and people were just, why are you so happy? And I was like, it's raining. I grew up in a city where it's raining, and I can see the ocean and, the mountains behind me. And now I know that you moved back now and live in Bodø, and I've moved back. We'll see how long this will last. But I just feel like you talk about in your book, more connected to my roots, and how much of a role like nature and where you grew up like is a part of your identity. I definitely feel that. And it's not like I promote for everyone to move back to where they came from or anything, but what I do believe in is that we listen inwardly to feel what is important for us, and what aspects of what we come from are important for us, and so that we can honor that. And there are many ways to do that without necessarily moving back to where you come from. For me, that was the solution eventually, and which I'm very grateful for. And I think also it's now when I'm an adult, because I've been living back and forth Holland for several rounds. And then the last time we moved to Amsterdam with our boys, my oldest was 4 years old, and we lived there. And then he said to me one day, "Mom, I think it is time that we move home now." And he was it. I want to move home to nature. Wow, that's
Yeah,
so beautiful.
and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, it almost brings me to tears. But every day now, we live just by the woods, and we can see the beautiful mountains and the fjord from here, the ocean. And he says to me almost every day, like, remember that this was my decision. It was my recommendation. We go back to nature. So for him, that was also already so early on, deeply embedded in him. And yeah.
Yeah, it's for me, I mean, like you said, it's well, we've been living abroad, but not everyone has. A lot of people have been traveling, but when you've been away for years, I guess you see your country in a different perspective. At least I do. Like, I remember when I came back after years, I just had this almost like I had new eyes, new glasses on. Like, I would be like a tourist and make photos of everything. And I think that's a gift. I look at it that way, because now I'm like, oh, yeah, living abroad, I was the foreigner. I was exotic. And now I'm like, yes, my country is exotic, and I I am too. But yeah, this connection to nature, I mean, in these times, like you mentioned, nature as a tool to connect back to your true self. And nature is magical, and we are too. So
Yeah.
connecting to who you truly are. But
definitely, yeah. And I mean, there's been a lot of research done lately also, and there's a lot of theories that support this. How nature is beneficial and can increase our health, both physically and mentally. So we can use whatever we have in our immediate surroundings, even if it's a park, just a plant in the office, or whatever you have. But we are, as animals, humans as animals, we are drawn to everything that is alive, and in the relation to this interbeingness, which is suggested by Dan Siegel, is this: we thrive better when we are in contact with other living beings. And
yeah. Now that maybe it's more difficult to socialize, because we are social creatures, and that affects us big time. But like you said, we can maybe connect more to nature and hug a tree.
For sure. Yeah. And I even though lockdown many places, and the physical isolation is detrimental for us, that is for sure. So it's definitely a huge impact on people's mental health. However, there's of course an increase in the application and the use of social media and or connecting digitally, and that is also worth something. It also can benefit us and support us in this time of isolation. So my main point there is, because that's also one of the other well-being prescriptions by the end of my book, is togetherness. So that's another aspect that is essential for us and our well-being, to maintain a healthy level of well-being throughout, seeking out other people also. Staying connected.
Yeah, because even before this pandemic, I guess you as a psychologist can attest to that. There was already like a big, mental health crisis in the world. There's a lot of reasons behind that, and you mentioned some of them in this book. And now it's just like been escalated. So it was already difficult to get help before this. So now it's just like you said, you can reach out to people, you can use nature, you can buy this book, or there are a lot of ways to help yourself also in these times. And we need all these tools, because good help is kind of difficult to come by these days.
Yeah, I do, however, also see that many of my colleagues are starting to evolve into more digital use, with therapy. So that's also good to see. But of course, accessibility and having good help is essential. And whoever I talk to, I mean, I'm in therapy as well. I mean, I say this to everyone, like, it's good, whatever things you're going through, having help, starting with opening up to your family or your friends, talking to other people about what is alive in you is always good. And if you are in a place where you're really stuck and you feel like it's going on the cost of your daily functioning level, then it's for sure very important. Don't hesitate to ask for professional help. Speak with your doctor about it and get the right help. It's really important. I always stress that. Don't hesitate to ask for help.
Yeah, it's really difficult for a lot of people to ask for help. So we cannot, stress that enough. And like you said, it's also, it might be hard to come by, like I said, but going online has its pros and cons, and there are more psychologists also available online, and counselors and therapists and coaches and whatnot. But also, I gotta mention this because you can get a lot of free therapy on social media. There's a lot of bad advice out there too, but I see that a lot of therapists have actually used, I've been during this lockdown on TikTok, for instance, and I see that a lot of them share so many good tools.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing about that, because of course the sort of advice you get there is, of course, connected to the different laws of different countries and the professionals that are offering it. I just wanted to say this to everyone because I think it's good that people are on social media and online. However, it's like this: all the advices that are given are what we call in the category of psychoeducation. So, I mean, it's information about something on a more generic level for actual therapy that can only happen in a room or one-on-one with the therapist, because the therapy is all about that relational interaction that happens, and that's really where the therapeutic work lays.
Yeah.
So if everyone is just aware of that, and another aspect of this, therapists going online and also people sharing more about their experiences, I think it's really good because it breaks down the stigma about everyone has a mental health, and it's what we're talking about. It's when there is unhealth, and to nuance and understand when does it go from being a sort of a normal fluctuation in let's call it ease and unease, but towards being something that is very dysfunctional and could possibly become very severe. So I think it's interesting, our generation communicating more openly than previous generations about emotions, feelings, but also just how it is to be living a life, and when things are tough, how does that look like? And I really appreciate this openness more within the frameworks of the channels that we do have.
Yeah. Definitely. I think the millennial generation has brought a lot of awareness to mental health, and that it's so important. Like you said, it's definitely, you can follow these, like, what did you call it? Psychoeducation. Yeah. But there's a lot of fun memes too. A therapist that I follow, she's just like how your parent maybe would react to things like, setting boundaries, or just like talking about mental health, like, you're fine. Get over it, so that's so on point, because like you said, it's difficult to ask for help, and then if you ask for help and someone's just like, oh no, you're fine.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Because we are made of a different fabric than they were. We are a product of everything that was behind us and also them, and in this context of this time, and that's who we are. So yeah, that's, then if you ask for help and you get that reply, then I would say ask again, and say, seriously, I'm asking for help. Please say something else, and but I know for sure, if you go and ask in the right places, you will definitely get the support that is needed.
Yeah, because you talk a lot about the like you said, we maybe grew up in another society than they have. So it's kind of dysfunctional, this society. And you talk a little bit about that and how this hyper focus on individuality and, what do you call it? This performing.
Perfectionism paradigm. So it's interesting. I mean, from where I stand and the possibilities my mother had, for example, so that's one generation back. I know already that me and my sisters, we're so much more fortunate to have so much more alternatives than she had. And then, of course, from my grandmothers, I'm way, ahead, like with possibilities as a woman and as a mother. And which I really appreciate. But there's some the backside of this society is that because it's this hyper focused on result orientedness, and it's just basically been the hegemony of what has been brought or pushed forward, since after the Second World War, industrialism and all this. So this is just also sort of drained through all the layers of our society, and also we're hyper focused on performing in schools and in whatever we do, and this perfectionism paradigm is really the framework of the millennial generation. And in one way, it kind of pushes us forward to be more focused and really achieve things, but the backside is hardcore. We are also the generation with the highest rate of mental health issues. So and this is what we see the reaction to now. Is that okay? We've got to talk about this. We can't just kind of keep pushing forward, and then you either have those who are front end and performing, achieving, and then the other parts that say, hey, it's just too exhausting, I can't do it. What is there between that? There's a lot between that. And then, we can start to talk about what is living this life actually, what are the values to uphold, and what kind of choices are we actually able to make within the realm and the framework of this paradigm that has been very much present. And I think it's changing a lot, because I see both, of course, in my line of work and the approaches that are becoming more popular. We can see it with understanding why yoga and mindfulness has become so popular, is that people feel something is missing. They want to connect to something deeper within themselves. They want to also connect with others. So they want to have this connection emotionally, spiritually, and also with each other as human beings.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I've struggled a lot with perfectionism, and I'm still a work in progress. And starting this podcast has definitely been a training. But yeah, it's I think also Norway, and I know that maybe in the Nordic countries in particular, are very individual focused on individualism, or how do you say it? Yeah, we're all we have to make it by our own, by ourselves. And I definitely see a difference having lived abroad. But yeah, like you mentioned, the relation to mindfulness and yoga, and I think it's so interesting. There are a lot of therapists that have become yoga teachers and vice versa. But this is another tool, practicing mindfulness. And you talk a little bit about this in your book, the modern spirituality versus the ancient wisdom, and also how it relates to modern psychology. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that, all the beautiful wisdom teachings and the philosophy, we've learned so much from that. And these were, these prophets and these practitioners, they were really the first scientists and psychologists, because they were really trying to figure out, how does it all work? Who are we, and why do we think like we do? Why do we act like we do? And then later on, of course, with Western sciences, and we've seen a lot in psychology history, you see that people were very curious about Eastern philosophies early on. So it's kind of, it's been moved in psychology as well. But then there is something happened along the way in contemporary psychology. I think it's important to understand the practices of the wisdom teachings, because they're quite generic in a way. The philosophies are generic, and contemporary psychology are theories and methodology that we know work to support us, understanding us and our mind, and supporting us in our when we're going through difficulties. And I think it's important to understand where we live right now and the context we live in when we bring these two together, and that we cannot kind of bring only the wisdom teachings or only the contemporary psychology. I think they have a lot to offer to each other, and they can complement each other in many ways. Well, the wisdom teachings really something that you integrate through experience, through the practice, while contemporary psychology is something that offers something through relationships and understanding the mind. And we know a lot because of research and science. And then another part in there is this kind of what binds it all together is spirituality, whatever that is, because spirituality, I think, is something very personal and individual. And each and every one are to define or feel into what that means, for you. And I do believe that anything can be a spiritual experience, but you are to define if it is meaningful for you or not. And I like to say that because I do actually, I know big parts of the global community of so-called contemporary spiritual community. And I'm not so appreciative to when it's, suggested or conditioned to people what spirituality is, because it is something very personal, and it is only you that can define what sort of meaning it has for you in a given moment in your life.
Yeah. Back to that inner spark.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also want to touch a little bit about the whole yoga path and, modern spirituality, because there's a lot of traps in that world, and a lot of, inauthentic teachers as well. Like, a lot of people approach this world, for healing and, learn how to control their monkey mind. And yeah, it is a journey, but I guess if you have any advice for people starting out with yoga and mindfulness, or people who've been on this path and, haven't really made, if they're being honest with themselves, progress.
Yeah. Well, in search of teachers, or or moving on your path, I think it's important to be aware of certain things. First of all, when we move in the direction of that path, there is a curiosity in us or something that motivates us. We might be vulnerable in that moment of time, and we're looking for something. And I think it's important, if you can, stay close to your boundaries, be wary of your boundaries, but also then seek out teachers, or usually we say like this, the teacher will come to you, that it's meant for you, that resonates with you, get to know them a little bit, know their path into it, and investigate how they live this practice and how this journey has been for them. I think that's the best thing I can say. And I also just want to say, remember that all these teachers are just normal people, because that's, maybe some people will be mad at me for saying this, but like I said, I know I I know a big part of the yoga community and the spiritual community, and we tend to put people on a pedestal when we believe that they have something that we don't. But it's, they are people, and they have done their journey in this and invested time in practice and trying to understand themselves. And if we can see each other as people, just everyone with our vulnerabilities, our strengths and weaknesses, then I think we can meet and walk on this journey more together than if we keep putting people on pedestals and maybe get disappointed. Or I think it's important to, especially because I think in the spiritual community we have an extra responsibility, because like I said, people come, they might be vulnerable, they might look for something. So the incongruence between what they expect and the reality might be very hurtful, actually, or harmful. So, for you as a student, just make sure to know the teachers that you approach or that come to you. And for you as a teacher, just be wary of your responsibility and be open about your own journey into it. I think that's the best thing I can say. Yeah,
that's good advice. And there are a lot of yoga teachers out there, but not all of them are therapists. So just remember that, like, take any advice with a grain of salt and always check in with yourself. But I wanted to touch upon this because there's so many teacher trainings out there, and there's not a lot of regulations, I think. Mm-hmm. So for you, who you run a yoga studio, and you've been teaching trainers, teaching teachers, sorry. Yeah. So, do you have anything to say in that regard?
I do.
Yeah.
So this is like my passion, right? Because this is, the material in my book. And we have 5 yoga studios in Holland. I've been running teacher trainings, be part of developing the academy there, or the set of the academy at Delight Yoga. I'm involved in the Institute for Yoga Therapy training. I teach a module there. And I have my own training and material, both from the book, Inner Spark, but everything I've done up till now has now become the training Yogi Facilitator. So that's a 4-level advanced training. And this is a training that I created both because when I was studying psychology and yoga, taking my trainings, I was like, where is this missing piece? How do I bridge this? Like, I want to see some kind of training that take into account both languages. And then eventually that became my training, the Yoga Facilitator Training. And this is for the teachers that are interested in mental health and interested in diving into the deeper layers of themselves, but also how to help others, because it is indeed a lot of yoga teachers that have the best intentions, but they don't have sufficient knowledge or experience in both in psychology or in how to facilitate a transformational process. Mm-hmm. So this is why I created a Yogi Facilitator program. It's a leadership training where you get to really evolve and elevate your skill set as a facilitator, so that you're more prepped and have the competence required if you want to work one-on-one with people, or if you want to work with particular populations that have mental health considerations.
Yeah, because yoga has a lot to offer, and these mindful practices, in addition to also conventional therapy.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is that program sounds amazing. Like I've done some teacher trainings, and I've been in this yoga world for many years now, and a lot of people, they put the teachers on pedestals, and they come for advice, but like you said, even therapists go to therapy. And I think a lot of yoga teachers came to yoga because they wanted to maybe help themselves.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah, I mean, we're just people, right? So that's it. And the training that I've created is just, finding that, or giving people that language, that where it goes hand in hand, that is supportive for these exact things.
Yeah, because nowadays, modern yoga, as it's portrayed maybe on Instagram, it's maybe more of a show off thing that feeds into this whole perfectionism thing and performing. So yeah, it's all about that inner journey. And the yoga practice, yes, it can be physical, and it can lead you to a transformational journey, that too, that route. But I think it's important to maybe distinguish that. At least in my experience, I've had really transformational experiences with yoga, but that has been with really qualified teachers who are, like you said, like really stepping into that whole role of being a facilitator of healing, because a lot of people have actually been damaged in the yoga world too.
Yeah, and I want to speak to that for a moment, because another thing that I see, both as a psychologist, but also as a woman, maybe, and so I'm just going to apologize if I offend anyone saying this, but I think it's really important, is that in the framework of spirituality and the teachings, I have seen and heard and experienced myself a lot of, going over some boundaries that are really bad, and in the name of spirituality, there's been pushed. So there's a silver lining where you can go to very great extent and kind of put it in the box of spirituality. I'm just going to challenge myself for this. And yes, this is probably just stay equanimous, tolerate this, or keep going and so forth. While in fact, it is quite abusive. And I just want to bring this up as a topic because I care about it and I see it all the time. And I say it in particular as a woman because the majority of practitioners in this community are women. The majority of people working in the industry are women. But there are also many male teachers and males on top in the businesses. I'm not going to put this on a gender thing because I think, excuse my French, an asshole is an asshole, whatever gender. But I just want to say this again, as what I said about contemporary spirituality, is that we have a huge responsibility when we work in this field and our how we practice it, and to everyone that are, stepping into this field and this community, just like I said, be aware of your boundaries and know that, no one can push you over your boundaries, even though it's in the name of spirituality, It is supposed to be an individual journey. And like I said, no one can define for you what spirituality is or tell you which practices you have to do. This is your journey. This is your exploration. It's supposed to be something that will indeed reconnect you to your inner spark, not the opposite.
Yeah, that's so important. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And like you said, it's all about, getting closer to ourselves because it's society has taught us to look outside of ourselves all the time for validation. Am I good enough? Will this person like me? And yeah, it's important to remember this. It's all tools. If it's bringing you away from who you are, you're not on the right path. Like this should bring you closer to who you truly are. And you talk a little bit about this, like your Buddha nature, like your inner spark.
Yes.
A little teaser there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is so important. Yeah, you're right. How you meet the emotional struggle within yourself, how you find ease in unease will determine who you are. And this is connected to your Buddha nature and the realization that you are already integrated as a whole and full being. That inner spark is an innate part of you. You are innately of this nature. And I think this is just, it's such a healing message that we all, this is like medicine, the medicine that we all need, because we've been taught that we're not enough, you know.
Yeah. And inadequacy, the feeling of inadequacy and not being enough is something that I think is triggered in most people at different points. And definitely when you are on your way into the darkness, or, you know, when thoughts are bringing you down into a negative spiral, you meet that, you know, inadequacy somewhere along the line. And that's when we get disconnected from ourselves, you know, when we feel we are fragmented and not integrated. And so we forget that we are the Buddha nature already. We are our true selves, but it's all about how we relate to ourselves. So when we get in contact with this feeling of not being good enough, we start to talk very negatively and critically towards ourselves in the inner dialogue, which brings us even further away from ourselves. But if we are able to remember, oh yeah, we have this already, I am enough, and we start to really nurture good relationship with ourselves, then we'll keep coming back to our true nature, and that's something that serves us.
Yeah, you write this so beautifully, because you touched a little bit about your inner spark, and you say that, you know, I believe it's not who you are, but what you do and how you do it that will determine who you are in any given moment. And we're all like changing and evolving all of the time, but still we have this essence in ourselves that's that Buddha nature that remains sort of the same.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's this little part of us that, you know, from when we are children and we believe in magic, or, you know, we have this playfulness within us, is that the more our mind is conditioned as we grow up and become adults, we lose touch with that part of us, you know. But with remembering this Buddhahood in ourselves, and keep coming back to the essence of who we are, then we can really reconnect with that magic in the inner spark.
Yeah, because, you know, like back to the society again, like it puts labels on things, and we're all supposed to fit in these boxes. And now maybe in this pandemic, maybe if you've lost your job, like, who am I without my job? Like, I put so much of my identity into this thing that I'm doing, but, you know, your nature is always the same.
Yes, yeah. But it's hardcore to be a human being. I mean, we are so impacted with, you know, with the groups that we are living within, smaller groups, the families, the family units, and the society, the culture, everything, you know, it impacts us. And it's like, it's a matrix basically, and we have a lot to unravel to come back to our true self. But it's possible, and first of all, we need to know it. We need to be aware of it, and of course, such things as losing your job, it impacts the sense and feeling of your identity. So it's a big work to do to really stay connected with your true self and your inner spark in such tough times.
Yeah. But, well, from that inner darkness, from the outer one, which affects us also mentally. But yeah, these are that darkness is a great fertilizer also for change. And you guide us along the way in your book. And yeah, so I definitely recommend that everyone gets this book, because it's so beautiful, number one. I'm all about the aesthetics, but also the feeling. Like, I'm a huge consumer of books. I've always been a book nerd. A little, yeah, and especially over the last decade, I've consumed a lot of self-help books on yoga, mindfulness, and yeah, I listened to a lot of them, but this is a great book to have in your hands, like the hardcore.
I love when you say that. I'm also such a book nerd, you know, and I love, and you know, it's incredible for me to also have this book in my hand, you know, it's very exciting. I wanted to just add one thing, because of course the book is constructed so that, you know, you can, if you read it from start to the end, you have it all like a home-based retreat, you know, that you can pick up at any moment. But the book is also constructed so that you could just, you know, open it on any place, you know, and you read just one part at a time. It's not like you have to read the whole thing in one go, basically because, you know, I know as a mother, working mom, and, you know, life is hectic and it's not always that you have time to read a whole book full on. But every chapter of the book is constructed so there is both theory and both practices and assignments that you can do for yourself. So it should be something that is overcomable and definitely useful in anyone's daily life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good to have a guide, and there are also some questions, you know, that you can journal. That's a good tool. That we can, maybe you've been to a yoga class or retreat where you yeah, by the way, I saw that you hosted a retreat in Lofoten, up in the north of Norway.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, it was so amazing. And it's organized by my very good friend Andrea at Min Yoga Lofoten and the Lofoten Yoga Festival. And they have this beautiful, beautiful place out there, which is a huge inspiration for me in my writing, in something else that I'm writing. And yeah, we had this retreat there just a few weeks ago, and we swim in the cold ocean and with our yoga practice. And there's a lot of, I go through the assignments in the book and the practices in the book. So this is a retreat that we will be doing annually. So for anyone that are curious about Lofoten and northern Norway, this is definitely something to stay tuned. You can check out on my website. For the retreats, yes.
I definitely want to attend a retreat in Lofoten. Yeah, I've never been, so I need to book. But yeah, you and also your yoga facilitator training. You use your book as a
so that's the materials, the fundament for the training. And because of the pandemic, I had to put the whole training online. So in 2021, all the modules will be up there. All the 4 levels of the training will be possible to partake in online. And I have already on my website quite a few online courses and videos that are connected to the book that you could also do if you don't want to do the whole training. So actually, in 2021, I will just be uploading more material online that is in support of the book, that is also psychoeducational videos and support for people when they might need it. So it's accessible when they need it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, amazing. Well, you do so much good work in the world, Kristin. But so I want to ask you, how do you take care of yourself? How do you fill up your own cup?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I have to say, first of all, I do things pretty slowly. So that's one thing. I like always to say that I hurry in slow motion. So that's just, in a way that I can definitely be impatient and try and do things fast. But I have learned to know when I do things, especially in my work, to pace it out and to wait, that sometimes you go 5 steps forward and then I have to wait until it's ready to continue. So I've learned this rhythm of myself. Another thing I do pretty much every day is that I rest after dinner. So, with my 2 boys of almost 7 and almost 10, they're, cute and but active boys, as they should be. But I have, implemented this in our daily life. Okay, after dinner, this is also something my grandparents did, right? Back in the days, they did this. They had a rest after dinner. So I do that. And I'm also very wary of my energy level, in the sense that I don't try to stuff my days with too much stuff, because already as a working mom, that's more than enough things to do in a day. I try to focus on being social, and I really try to be kind in my inner dialogue, to not beat myself up if I don't get things done. But it's like I'm aware of it, so I do make some very conscious choices around how what I spend my time doing.
Yeah, those are some good input. Yeah, I can definitely, practice slowing down and not filling my schedule, too much. Yeah, that helps. And also being aware of your inner dialogue. Yeah, that's but what inspires you? I mean, you do so much, so I want to know where you get all this inspiration from.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question also. I'm inspired by people. I can be inspired by, I want to now talk about Elizabeth Gilbert. She's a, known author. She has inspired me a lot, when entering the field of writing. Dani Shapiro also, she's also a writer. I'm inspired especially by women, that get things done. I'm very curious about how they do things. So like, Oprah Winfrey, for example, I'm just like curious about, how is that, to be in that realm of creating, and executing, of course, also. I'm very much, I'm inspired by anything. Like when I walk in nature or music or pictures, paintings, I can be very much inspired by things that touches me in one way or the other. What I mentioned about Lofoten and this beautiful place where we had a retreat, it's called Kalle, and they call it the end of the world by those mountains up by the ocean, where you can actually look all the way across the fjord to Bodø. But it's just so, it's a mythological landscape, and it inspires me so much when I write and when I just to get connected inwardly within me to access, whatever creative energies that I have. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm also inspired by the same people. Like I want to write a book. Yes. So that's a dream that I have. And when I read Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, I was just like, damn it, she already wrote that book. And she talks about this in her book, Big Magic, like how ideas visit different people. Yeah. But I think I can write my own version of the Eat, Pray, Love.
Absolutely. Yes. And so you should.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've inspired me a lot with your book.
Good.
So that's amazing. You never know who you inspire with your work.
I know. Yeah, it's fascinating. And thank you for saying so, and I'm just I still, like I said, I almost shake a little bit every day, because I'm still, a little bit that scared little bunny that is like, whoa, okay. But my best advice is just that when you get connected with that inspiration within you, take it step by step and express what you are inspired,
Yeah, I think it's so important to do that step by step. Like we all have these big dreams, and if you don't break them down, they will forever be up there in the clouds. So doing like the little steps, and also I want to write a book, so I'm starting a podcast so I can share stories and practice that way, and also writing a little bit every day. Like I know you have a podcast too, Best Friends Talking with your best friend in London. Yes. So that's cool. I can link to that too. Yes. But I remember that you mentioned when your friend asked you, like, how did you write that book? You do so many things, and with 2 little boys, like, and you mentioned just like writing a lot in your notes app on your phone.
I am actually, and you will not believe it, but yeah, I both for this book, Inner Spark, but also for, I mean, now I'm writing on a novel, on a series of novels now, actually, which is set in the mythological landscapes of northern Norway, yeah, because I mean, ultimately, I would love to sit behind my computer and just dive into writing hours every day. That's not possible because I have a job and I have boys to attend to and so forth. But what I do is that I use the notes on my phone, and I have these folders there, and I write. Sometimes, it's like in big magic, the door just opens and there's, phrases coming out and paragraphs, and I just have to write it down. And I do that because you can do that pretty fast. And then, that's it. Also just allows me to live in that story, in that world for a while, and know the characters, so that eventually, I when I do have the time to sit down for a few hours, I do get to compile everything in the manuscript and the story that's actually will come out. So that's my best recommendation to all you that want to write or aspire to write. Just start a folder in your notes on your on your phone when you're on the bus, or when you're having a moment, 5 minutes here and there. Just write, if it's just one sentence, whatever, but take it out of your head and bring it down on paper. And then you will see, as the text grows, that the story will grow within you as well. And there you have it. You've started.
Yeah, I get so many ideas when I go to bed. So I definitely, yeah, I definitely have like a full folder, but it's just like, stop. I don't want to, say, not me to the ideas, because please come. But I need to maybe, set aside some time also, with meditation and all of that. Yeah. But yeah, I've definitely thought about, the fact that I maybe need to get some, to birth some children. Because I realize the more busy you are, the more laser focused you become. So I think this is your mom's skills, because this is, birthing a book. It is it is a child, it is a project.
It actually took me 9 months to write it, from start to end. When I started, I did actually. So very much so, yeah.
Yeah, it is this way with every ideas. We're always pregnant with some ideas. So yeah. Yeah, that's a funny connection there at the end. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And definitely check out The Inner Spark. It's also out in Dutch. And it will be coming out in Spanish too.
Yeah, in Spanish and in Norwegian also, coming now in 2021. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, so maybe we can talk in Norwegian the next time when it's out.
Good fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was so good fun. And thank you for just this beautiful chat. And excited to hear more about your writing onwards.
Yeah, me too. Well, yeah, I'm going to leave all your links down below. And yeah, until next time, I'm just going to say ciao, ciao.